Hello and welcome, Omni Dogs and Omni Kittens, to Omni Dogs Vault, where we have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Mark Waid today. Mark, how are you?
Good this afternoon. How are you this afternoon?
Good, thank you. And my co-host Taylor. Taylor, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk to.
Oh, Taylor can't hear you.
Stuff.
We can't hear Taylor.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, still me. Wait, please hold.
Uh-oh, we're running into technical difficulties.
Oh no.
I have to go grab. Can you hear me, Jess?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
I can't hear him. It's odd. Huh.
I'm gonna go grab my my headphones. Maybe that'll work. Just keep going, Jess.
Okay.
You just try again, and if not, you'll just have to repeat his questions. You'll have to act them out in interpretive dance. One of the two.
Interpretive dance. We first have to address the not the elephant in the room. Well, it's the elephant in my room.
Okay.
Because it's the greatest comic book ever written, and I'm not saying it because well, yeah, I am saying it because I'm interviewing you. I've made videos of it. I've proselytized about it. I even got a picture of you handing me $1 royalty at the 2017 Baltimore Comic-Con.
That's true. Yes, yes.
Which I will show in just a second. But that is the greatest comic book ever written, which is Irredeemable.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Well, Taylor's back. Taylor, you want to say something and see if you can be heard?
Can you hear me now?
Oddly, I can't hear him, but you can.
Why don't you sign out, Taylor, and sign back in?
Okay.
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 Irredeemable.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that book that struck such a chord with me. It was such a fully realized world with such incredible characters, and the scary thought that the Plutonian is more, to me, is more likely to be the likelier character,
right,
than Superman, the big blue Boy Scout.
Yeah.
If you've got all that power, man is generally selfish when he's born. I think people are born selfish. Their first words are no. They want what they want when they want it. And I think the Plutonian just seemed more realistic to me than Superman.
I think that there's something there. I mean, we don't have the same philosophy in terms of what the core of humans is, but there is the notion that if you're, people are going to snipe no matter what you do. People are going to pick, people are going to find fault, people are going to try to cancel you for whatever reason. And if you're a superhero trying to live in that culture and trying to do right by people, and you weren't brought up by the Kents, and you were not brought up by the Kents, then you're leaning more into the frustration of, I am an alien, I am alone, and people don't like me, and that makes me sad. Or homicidal. Yeah.
Right. And you're more likely to act out.
Yeah.
And then you've got his not his opponent, but his opposite in Cubit, who thinks of in a mind-bendingly different way. And the book goes on in various different directions a couple of times. I mean, several times, where you're led to think one thing and another thing pops up. It's just I could talk to you about it for the whole 45 minutes, but I just wanted to acknowledge how much it meant to me as a book. And I know it's getting a reprint, fortunately, this summer if things work out.
Yeah, whenever, yes.
Distribution wise. Let me just see if I can share this picture of Mr. Waid being a gentleman at the Baltimore Con when because I have promoted this book in the Omnibus group on Facebook, and anybody that I can talk to, I talked him into giving me $1 royalty.
Yep.
And they're
well deserved.
My friend John from England took that picture. I just wanted to. That was one of the highlights of my life. Really,
Thank you.
it was so funny that, and you were such a good sport about it. Taylor, can you be heard now?
I hope so.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Good.
Great. I was worried I was going to be like the awkward third wheel over here the entire time.
Well, I got my chance to talk about Irredeemable, and we're going to have the second third of the interview about what you're currently up to, because I know that's a big job that you've taken on, and why you're so busy as opposed to a lot of other creators who are kind of slower right now.
Right, exactly.
You're like all four wheels going.
Yeah.
Taylor, did you want to ask Mark about any specific comics and his inspiration or anything?
Yeah, sure. So we can talk about your big two work and head into Humanoids. But what work from the big two, Marvel and DC, would you say you're the most proud of or means the most to you personally?
Easy. From DC, it's Superman Birthright. From Marvel, it's the Fantastic Four run.
Okay.
Wow, okay.
Because that FF run was with my friend Mike Waringo mostly, and he was just phenomenal. He was such a great storyteller, taken from us way too early, and such a brilliant storyteller that he made every issue a joy to write. And of course, Superman Birthright, because it's my love letter to Superman. And I feel good about that one because a lot of people come up to me at shows or signings and say, I didn't really like Superman until I read this, and now I really like Superman. I think, okay, great, then I did my job.
Yeah, I think Birthright and Secret Identity really won me over. Cool. So both you and Kurt Busiek helped me a lot in that way. But the thing that's crazy to me is that you've touched upon Batman and Kingdom Come and Tower of Babel. You never actually written a single Batman story. Have you ever come close or had a series that almost happened?
I wrote one Batman story that most people forget, and probably justifiably so. It was a one-shot called Batman in Barcelona. And God, how long ago? I mean, 10 years, easy. It was basically it was kind of a promotional stunt because it was a solid story. It was done by me and a Spanish artist. And the idea was that it would be simultaneously released in Spain, in America, in various European countries all at once, just as a kind of an experiment in distribution. And I think the art in that thing is phenomenal, but in retrospect, I never could wrap my head around it. But then again, if it's Batman in Barcelona, you're not getting to play with all the cool toys, right?
Right.
So but trust me, this is not the first time anybody has observed this. And recently, this is not the first time people have observed. That's probably the only major character at both companies. I mean, Iron Man and Thor at Marvel, I've written them more than Batman, but not solo. And Batman is really the only major character at DC I've never really had a turn with like that.
And I'm guessing you have a lot of ideas about Batman in your mind, I would assume.
You would be surprised. Not so many, because I'm so laser focused on whatever it is I'm doing right now that I don't really have like a backlog of, geez, here's a million Batman stories I want to write. But if I ended up writing the book, yes, then they would come pouring out of me.
I think the Tower of Babel sort of, to me, counts as a Batman story because it's so focused on the edge he has or the way his mind works. And the way he thinks basically is the focus of that story, even though it's a Justice League story.
Yeah. Oh, it's very much a Batman story. I mean, now I will say this in Batman's defense that, because they voted him out of the Justice League for his conduct in Tower of Babel. But what people don't seem to understand, or I fail to convey, is that Batman's sin was not coming up with game plans for what happens with the Leaguers go wild. There's nothing wrong with it. If he said to Superman, by the way, just so you know, if you ever go crazy, I've got something. I got a plan B. Superman would go, great, that makes perfect sense. It's that he didn't tell anybody. It's that he kept that a secret. That's the part that I find that keeping secrets, or characters keeping secrets, is an enormous, a great tool to use in storytelling, and I use it a lot.
And that's one of Bruce's greatest weaknesses throughout his history, is that he keeps secrets from the ones he loves the most.
Yeah.
Is that kind of
Yeah.
the major statement you're trying to make about Batman in that story, that secrets among loved ones are destructive?
Yeah, and they can be. I mean, there is sometimes time for secret. There are times for secrecy, but between those who really you can't really build a relationship out of trust if you can't be honest with each other.
Well, then I'm in trouble with my wife when all those boxes of comic books come in every week and I smuggle them down to my basement.
Now, see, here's the thing. There's a difference between secrecy and privacy. This is
There you go, Jeff.
This, by the way, has always been my excuse as to why it's okay for Superman to maintain a secret identity, because there is a difference. He's not like he's lying to his friends per se. It's an act of commission. It is more of an act of omission, and it is more about the privacy. He is entitled to his privacy as long as he's not running around telling people right and left, Are you Clark Kent? No, I'm not Clark Kent. That's a lie. But in my mind, Superman always manages to just sort of skirt the question, so he never actually has to lie, and the rest is just privacy. I mean, your name is not Omnidog, really, but that's how people know you,
Right?
And you're entitled to that.
And I also just wanted to kind of dovetail off what you guys were talking about with Birthright. When I finished that book, I said, "This is the movie." I thought, "This is the movie," and of course, it never was. But I thought it was so pitch perfect. It could have been a great movie, I thought.
Thank you. Well, again, there are many years ahead of us. Who knows what could happen?
Good. That's great. I like the way you think.
And I know that after all these years, it's been almost 24 years since Kingdom Come came out. And they've talked about that a lot over the course of your career. But can you tell us a little bit about the creation of Kingdom Come and your collaboration with Alex Ross? Because I just reread that book this past week, and it is so good. It's just one of those books that's a perennial classic. It'll always be a classic, in my opinion.
Thank you. Well, all credit to Alex. I mean, again, as I made abundantly clear to everybody, Alex came to the table with the core idea. The modern, the traditional superheroes have retired. The modern superheroes are running amok, and somebody has to do something. And he had a bunch of great character sketches, and he had ideas for Norman, who was, of course, is based on his dad, and some ideas for the Spectre. And from there, what he didn't have was a story per se. So that was where I came in, and we sat down many a time and picked at that thing and built it from scratch. And that's, it was a true collaboration in that we had to agree on everything. He read all the scripts and would have notes. I would look at the artwork and have notes, and it was it's probably the strongest collaboration I've ever been in.
Why do you think that story has such staying power? 'Cause it's like almost 25 years later, and it's still just as popular as it was in 1996.
I think Alex. I really think that's the answer, because Alex's work is just so beautiful. I think that if that book had been drawn by, Joe Newguy, I don't think anybody would pay attention.
Have you and Alex ever toyed around with doing something else, or is that like your definitive book of you working together?
I think it's probably our definitive book. It's that we talk, all's good between us, but he's just kind of gone off his own way, and I've gone off my own way, and I would never say never, but he's less interested in sitting down and doing, books full of painted pages every month, which I can't blame him. I mean, it would take him, he did 10 pages a month when we were doing Kingdom Come. So it took him, 18 months. So, but that was 10 of those paintings a month, once every 3 days. And you look at those paintings and Alex was working around the clock and, burning the midnight oil. And I just we're 25 years older now. I don't think we're interested in doing that anymore.
At the height of your collecting powers, who had more in their comic collection, you or Alex? I've seen Alex's collection.
Oh, I always did. Come on. I always did. There's no question about that.
I saw him on CBS News in his collection, and I was like, that's insane.
Oh, that was an amazing little museum he's got. Yeah.
But now we saw Donnie Cates say that back in the day, you owned a house, and across the street you owned another house, And in that house was your collection.
Yeah, pretty much. It was, I want to make it abundantly clear that I am not rich. That what happened was I was living in Indiana, where you can buy a house for a credit card. And and so I had literally bought a house on the corner. Then the guy across the street came over and said, "Hey, listen, if you know anybody, are you interested in buying a house?" I'm like, "I'm the last guy to ask. This is new. I just bought a house." He said, "Well, just come on over and take a look." And I went and looked in the place, and it was, he had like stripped it to the bones. It was just torn up. It was old. It was ramshackle, but there was potential in it. And I asked him how much he wanted. He said he wanted, I think, $10,000. I said, "Okay, well, how fast can I write you a check for a house for $10,000?" And so I called up Nick Barucci. I said, "Hey, you want that miniseries you want me to write? If I write all 4 of them right now, will you pay me?" "Yeah, you'll pay me." So house in hand, and spent a little bit of money fixing it up room by room. So I was able to get a lot of my, the bigger paraphernalia, and it was my office where I would go across the street. But in time, I ended up moving back to California, which means that no one can afford a house. No one in comics can afford a house in California. So, I got my nice place here, but sadly, a lot of that stuff is now in storage.
And can you remember some of the bigger or more memorable pieces that really spoke to you?
Well, I mean, there's all kind of Captain America shields. There's a Phantom Zone projector. There's giant standees of Superman 2, the movie. There's a ton of stuff. Donnie's favorite, which actually didn't make the trip back, sadly, was the chair in which I wrote Kingdom Come. So
cool.
It sadly did not make the trip back. It was already that thing was on its last legs anyway. But I love the fact that Donnie thought that by sitting in it, he would gain some sort of inhuman powers. And maybe that is why. I think actually that is why he's so good now.
Look at his career skyrocketed since he sat in that chair.
Yeah, come to that. Coincidence? I don't think so.
Maybe he owes you some royalties.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that why you let it fall off the truck so nobody else could use it to skyrocket?
Right, exactly. Nobody, because I don't need the competition. Exactly.
So we talked about. Did you want to ask him about before we get to Humanoids, because we know you have a huge job there? Do you want to touch on Daredevil with him?
Yes, because I love Kingdom Come, I love Birthright, a bunch of other your books, but my favorite by far is Daredevil. Your run with Chris Omni. Matt Murdock's one of my favorite characters, as seen by my dog being named Murdock. And I think some people characterize your run as lighthearted,
which is baloney.
Yeah, I'm rereading it right now. It's pretty dark. It's just you really wrap your arms around the superhero concept of Matt Murdock, instead of him being like a down and dirty, street fighter. He's more of a superhero. What made you go towards that direction?
That was actually the request from Marvel. When Steve Wacker called me up and asked me if I wanted to do the book, that was the buy-in, because they had so much dark Daredevil up to that point. And I said, all right, if you let me really embrace the tropes, I'm not going to make it a throwback book. I'm not going to make it feel like a Silver Age book or anything like that. But I do need to lean into what I do well, which is superheroes. Not, I'm never going to do it as well as I'm never going to do the street stuff as well as Frank Miller. So why try? I'm never going to do the stuff that Brian Bendis did as good as Bendis. So why try? Like, go ahead and lean into what I do well. And I'm with you. I get frustrated when people say, "Oh, it's goofy and lighthearted." No, horrible things happen to Matt in this series. There's rooms full of human heads. I mean, there's things happen. The only difference is in how Matt reacts.
Right.
That he buys into the fake it until you make it category of I'm at my bottom, and I have to, if I'm going to go anywhere and I'm ever going to get out of this hole, I just got to act like I'm already out of this hole.
And what reaction have you received about your depiction of him battling depression? Has that been something that's helped a lot of people as they read it?
I've gotten, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I've gotten a lot of nice letters and a lot of people at shows talking to me about that. And it's something I've dealt with all my life myself. So I'm writing from a position of knowledge, especially the whole notion that in a real sort of metaphysical sense, depression is this thing that lives inside you that doesn't want you to be happy because it feeds off of your misery. So that's, and that's what Matt ran into so many times, is that it's actively trying to keep him from doing the things that he loves, that he enjoys, that give him purpose. And because that's really how depression works. And I would never have impressed that on Daredevil if I didn't think that was already a part of his core personality. Like, I wouldn't do that with Supergirl if I took her over by, for instance. But with Matt, it made sense to me.
Right. And one of the most impressive parts of that run is your collaboration with Chris Samnee, who I think you two are some of the greatest. You're two of the greatest collaborators working in comics today. What is it like working with him? That compliment.
Phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal. When I first started working with him, it was like working with anybody else, where I would give him very tight, full scripts, which all artists are free to, do what, morph and change and do whatever they need to do as long as we're telling the same story. But, Chris very quickly became, I just get on the phone with him and talk out the stories. And then I would write up, I would write tight script for the talky stuff, or the stuff where I really wanted to do subtle things. But when it came to big action sequences and stuff, and just be like, Chris, go nuts, draw what you feel like drawing, and I'll make it work. And he never failed to deliver. I mean, it was great. It was great looking stuff. He's one of the best collaborators I've ever had.
He became a co-storyteller, co-writer. I think on Black Widow.
Well, yeah, he did actually. We were looking for something to do after Daredevil, and there were things that I wanted to do that he wasn't as keen on, and there were things that were offered to him that didn't seem like something I could get my handle on. But when Black Widow came up, he leapt on that, and in part because I was already swamped with work, but also in large part because he didn't really need me for the basic stories of the book, the basic look of it. Just he took points. So again, the way that would work is we would get on the phone, we'd discuss what happened to this issue, and then he'd go off and draw it, and sometimes make little margin notes about rough dialogue, so I will have some sense of what's going on. And I'd go in and dialogue it and make it abundantly clear that his name comes above mine in the credits, because it starts with him.
Right. And without this whole quarantine thing, we would have seen Black Widow by now. But by the trailers, it looks like they have taken a lot from your run with Chris Samnee. Even particular images.
At the very least, falling out of a helicarrier or whatever it is that she's doing as part of that trailer. So that would be, again, someday, when the after times is over and we can get back to normal, we'll find out.
Right. And do you and Chris have any plans to work together in the future at some point?
Here's the problem. Chris is so good, and he learned so much from doing Black Widow, that now he doesn't need a writer anymore. He's going to go do his own stuff. So I wish him the best. We talk every once in a while. I wish him the best. I would give anything to work with him again, but I understand the desire for any artist or writer or any creator to be a one-man show, because then it's your vision. So I'll be the first in line to buy anything he puts out.
Just as a quick question, has any character in the big two had the crap kicked out of him more than Daredevil?
No.
I feel like he has been stomped on way more times than is really fair.
Yeah.
Even though he's a fictional character.
That's the number of dead ex-girlfriends alone.
Right.
He's like stacked up like cordwood. Yeah, he's had a rough go of it. Yes. But that's what I like about Daredevil. That's what I liked about him when I was a kid growing up. I liked the character a lot because he seemed like an adult to me. Whereas the other Marvel characters, and again, I'm just being super general. And I'm talking about me when I was a really young kid, but I would look at the other Marvel characters and see them whining and complaining and justifiably, but acting like real people, but sometimes having that whole sort of woe is me thing, which is kind of common to Marvel characters. And Daredevil didn't. Daredevil was just like, all right, I got a problem, I'm gonna go ahead and fix it. And I like that about Daredevil. I always did.
Okay. I had a question and it just left my head. Oh, you said the Fantastic Four was one of your favorite books. I just read the Sue Storm book by you, and I really enjoyed that one too. It was a different take on her as a spy, and I really enjoyed that one.
Thank you.
That's probably the latest thing I've read from you. Is that the latest thing that's been released by you, or
I've been doing Doctor Strange for a while now too.
oh, okay, I haven't collected that one yet.
I think we've lost your
yeah,
partner there. He'll pop back in.
He'll sign back in.
It's funny, the Invisible Woman thing is actually probably the best recent example of what I think I do well, which is considering how these powers work and finding new ways and new applications for these powers that these people have, and what is it really like to have those powers. And the idea that, just the little subtle thing in there, the idea that Sue can actually change the color of things with her invisibility power, you know, it makes perfect scientific sense, but I never thought of it before. Nobody thought of it. And I love coming up with those little bits of business.
Yeah, and the reason I haven't read Doctor Strange yet is Taylor and I are primarily collected edition collectors, so we don't collect singles anymore.
Right.
So I'm waiting for it to be issued in a nice oversized hardcover or even a trade paperback. I'm happy.
Yeah, which is coming, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Your primary focus now is Humanoids. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Are you the publisher?
I am the publisher. For those who don't know, Humanoids is a publishing company that's been around for 45 years. They've been big in Europe. They're the ones behind. They've had Alexander Jodorowsky's work. They've had Mobius's work. They published The Ink Owl, which is one of the best-selling graphic novels in the world. They've got a huge European catalog. Not a whole lot of penetration in the American market. So I was brought in as a consultant a year and a half ago, maybe, to sort of walk them through what it's like to work in the American marketplace and what insights I can lend, because I've done everything by now. I've been an editor, a writer, an artist, an inker, a letterer, a publisher, everything. I'm a store owner. I mean, I've done everything but put the staples in the comics. And so that led to the publisher job. After a year and a half of this, I know what the publisher does. And the idea that we traffic mostly in original graphic novels was really appealing to me at this moment in time. And boy, in retrospect, was it ever the right move? I mean, I made that jump just before the pandemic started. And just from a daily work level, I am never been happier to have jumped ship from monthly comics to OGNs, at least for a little while. Because the company's doing well. I mean, we pushed our publishing slate back a few months to accommodate stores and retailers, but it's full steam ahead, and we've got some really awesome projects lined up for 2021 that are really gonna help Humanoids make a mark in the American market.
Are you writing any of those books, or are you more just focusing on the publishing aspect?
I'm mostly focusing on the publishing aspect. I will be writing one original graphic novel, maybe two, but that really is a function of me finding the time. Because again, I'm still moonlighting. I'm still doing, I'm still publishing at Humanoids, but weekends spent doing this book or that book or whatever, other outstanding commitments and stuff. So, yeah, when I can find time, I'll knock these OGNs out. But I'm really proud of what we've come up with.
Are there any artists or writers or concepts about these books you can tell us about yet?
Not so much. I mean, it's no surprise when someone like me, who's been in the business for a long time, gets in a position like this. I'm going to be calling in favors. That's what we do. And so, good long talk with Grant Morrison the other day, good long talk with, a bunch of other writers and artists whose names we haven't announced anything yet, but again, I'm aiming big. I mean, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And it is hard to compete with Marvel and DC on a couple of levels. First off, you don't want to compete with them on superhero stuff. Like, why would you? They do superheroes better than anybody else. We don't want to do a line of superhero comics. We kind of came adjacent to it with the H1 line, which we did recently with Ignited and Omni and Strangelands. But it's more about science fiction. It's more about fantasy. It's more about crime. It's more about, finding the genres where we're kind of off on our own. Being in the places that nobody else is where we want to be. And so to that end, we're pulling in some heavy hitters. It is hard to compete with Marvel, and that's what I was trying to say. It's hard to compete with Marvel and DC because they've got money, and because they've got, like, Warner's has serious money, obviously, and also because they're very smart. Both companies are very smart about locking up creators and exclusive contracts for lengths of time. And that is, as a editor or publisher from anybody but Marvel or DC, this is the common problem we all have, which is there's a lot of great guys out there we'd love to work with, but they're not available until 2022, 2023, or whatever. So it's that said, we're able to lock onto some good people. That's a really long answer to a very short question. Sorry.
Well, I think that Humanoids' method of publishing and TKO Comics' method of publishing is the way of the future. Just for people like Jess and I who wait for collected editions. Yeah. I think it's a really, really smart way to do. Because right now we're all in the binge model of Netflix and Amazon Prime. So I think that's a really good way to release the comics that you're publishing.
It is. It is not as easy as it looks. I mean, because on a couple of counts. First off, when you do periodicals and then collect them into trade paperbacks, you have two revenue streams, right? So you've got, you're not investing all in one. The other one is found money, if you will. But the other problem is going straight to OGN is that and I know this more than ever now that I was a store owner, still own a store, or part owner of a store. I am, as a store owner, it's easier for me to take a chance on a book that's $3.99 that I have no sales pattern for. I don't know how well it's going to do. But if it's $12.99, $14.99, $19.99, that's a bigger gamble, because, again, for those who are listening who don't really know how the market works, when you're a comic book store, you're buying these comics. You're not getting them and then sending anything back that you can't sell. You're stuck with these comics. You're buying whatever, you own it. And so you've got to sell what you buy. Otherwise, it just becomes backstock that is useless, because there's nothing less appealing than a 4-month-old issue of Aquaman. They've just, anybody who needs it. It's not a comment on the book. It's just anybody who wants or needs it already has it. So, so that, as much as anything, is the reason that we can't just go straight to collected edition, can't go straight to original graphic novels as often as we would like as publishers, because the economy of the comic stores just doesn't make that very possible.
Right. They need that weekly hit of new issues.
They need the weekly hit. I mean, if you're Brian, if you're Brian Bendis, if you're Brian Vaughn, you can probably get away with just doing a brand new self-contained $24.95 trade paperback, but most people can't do that.
And what are your main responsibilities as the publisher? I know we hear the word publisher, we think of, Jim Lee or Dan DiDio in the past. Like, what does a publisher actually do day to day, though?
Well, we have a lot of meetings, that's for sure. It's a lot of meetings. It's first off, it's my job to sort of say, okay, here's what the company's about. Here is my creative vision for the company. Here is the kind of material that I think we should be publishing, and why. And in the Humanoids case, it is a very transgressive company. It has always published stuff that is truly cutting edge in, whether it's about science or even, violence or sex or whatever. I mean, over in Europe, a lot more liberal attitudes toward that stuff. They've always been very, very transgressive as a publishing company. Ideas that people don't normally deal with, things that are sort of unsettling. I like that a lot. And so that's what we're leaning into very heavily. So it's setting, the roadmap so the editors and everybody else in the team knows what we're looking for. It is working with talent. It is going out and recruiting some of the bigger talent. It is, and to some degree, it's like just playing office manager to some degree, and make sure that the morale is up and make sure that everybody is on the same page. The most important thing you can do as a publisher is open the lines of communication so that everyone in the company knows what you're doing and why. I mean, not in the micro, but in the big, as a company, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and here's why we want it, and here's the help we need from you specifically to get there. And so being publisher is coordinating all that stuff. And then having meetings.
After the pandemic, say things go back to normal.
Yeah.
Will you be working out of your house still, or will there be a central location for you to go to?
I think, well, we had offices until the pandemic. I think
Okay.
that, and they're sitting there. I anticipate. I mean, I think everybody in the team would rather just be back in an office, because it's so much easier just for me to stick my head in my editor's office and go, hey, I got a question, other than have to ping him on Zoom and, are you home? Great. Let me set up a Zoom call. Let's have a 30-second conversation. That's no good.
Yeah. Okay. I know that the last thing I heard about you was that you are collaborating with Neil Adams on the Fantastic Four.
That's right. They've announced that. It's been something that's been in the works for a year, and we've kind of had to sit on it. So it's basically Neil came to Marvel and said, I want to do a Fantastic Four story. And Tom Brevoort, who was the executive editor and the FF, guru, came to me and said, all right, well, you did a great FF run. He said, I'm not saying it. And it's been a long ambition of yours to work with Neil, which is true. I mean, Neil was, when I was 10 years old, the first artist who I could recognize and go, I'm excited about that. I'm going to look for that guy. Because, when you're, 6, 7, 8, all comics art is good. All comic books are good when you're 8. But when you get to a certain point, you'll find the one artist who really stands apart from the crowd for you. And Neil was that guy for me. So he and I talked about the story. He had a couple of things he wanted seen in the story, but it was basically up to me to come up with a story. And the good news is he's done. He's finished all 4 issues, and it's being inked now. So we waited this long to make sure that there would be no interruption, that there'd be no slowdown in production. It's going to, 4 monthly issues, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like that.
He had the same impact on me as a young man. To this day, my favorite comic book single issue ever is Green Lantern, Green Arrow 76. I mean, that actually changed my life, the way I looked at things. Growing up where I did in Northern California, those were issues that I had never dealt with. And of course, credit to Dennis O'Neil for writing it. But when he took over on Batman and World's Finest Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, you're right. He was very recognizable, and he was immediately my favorite. Let's see, in 1968, I was 9 years old. So that's when I think I first discovered, or I don't want to say I discovered him, because obviously I didn't.
Yeah, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Was first aware of him on World's Finest, and I was just like, whoa.
Same here. There was just so much energy. There's so much energy to his work that wasn't present in. And I love the DC artists of the 1960s. Kurt Swan, to this day, remains my favorite artist of all time. But the dynamism, the excitement, the energy that he brought to those DC books was nobody. Looking back today, like no one could understand today. No one can understand it's like the Beatles. No one can understand the real impact that suddenly had unless you were there at the time.
Right. That is 100% true, because it was light years ahead of whatever was being published at the time.
Yeah.
It just leapt off the page as like the most realistic thing you could get.
Yeah.
And he was the first guy to give Batman chest hair. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. It's true. No nipples, but chest hair. Yes.
So Josh has talked about his favorite single issue that he has. Is there one that you have in your collection that means the most to you personally?
Yes. It is Action Comics 500. It is the life story of Superman. And it's done by Marty Pasco, who passed away just recently, which is a real blow, because I love Marty and respect him enormously. It's a life story of Superman. And the reason it means so much to me, besides the fact that I'm a big Superman fan, is that there is a sequence in there as he's telling his life story where he gets to his boyhood and he gets to finding Krypto, the dog that he had as a pet on Krypton, now on Earth. And what that meant to him. He's talking about what that meant to him as a kid, that suddenly he didn't feel so alone in the world because he was the last of his kind as far as he knew. As Superboy, certainly there was no Supergirl, there was no, or anything else. He was all alone in the universe, the last of his kind. And now here is something he can, here's some friend he can share this with that would understand what it feels like to have the wind blow in your face, in a way it can't for anybody else when you're flying, or the sound that bullets make when they bounce off living flesh. That's the money quote for me. And that one page informed so much of how I do what I do, because it taught me and got to me because you're inside the character's head, because you're wearing the suit. I mean, he's imagining what it would really like to be Superman, not just on a, hey, I have superpowers level, but how would I feel about this stuff? How would my life be different? How would I perceive the world differently if I had super senses, if I were Daredevil, if I were the Invisible Woman, whatever. And that lesson took hold on me early on, and I think it's really been a hallmark of my entire writing career. I think that's the backbone of it all, is writing about, my friend Tom Pyre puts it, writing about the superhuman condition.
I am going to go download that issue immediately after on Comixology. That sounds fantastic. I don't know that I'm a huge Superman fan, and I don't remember that issue.
It's a great book. I'm not sure it's on Comixology, which is heartbreaking.
What?
I'm not sure DC is scanned. It may be. I hope so. But I can't seem to find a digital copy of it. So I just keep pulling out my pulp magazine copy. Yeah. But good luck with it. Hope you can find it.
Okay, well, I'll go online and find it then on eBay. I don't care. I want this book now.
It's really good. Yeah.
Is it a pretty valuable book, or is it pretty?
Nah, it's pretty cheap. Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
I'm gonna find it first, then I'm gonna put this interview up because I don't want the price to go up.
I'm gonna guess. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna guess. Yeah, I mean, you can probably get it for $10, $12, probably. It's not that expensive. Yeah.
No. Okay, good. Well, I think we've taken an awful lot of your time. I really appreciate.
No, it's my pleasure.
I know how busy you are, and you've just been a favorite of both mine and Taylor's for years and years. I don't even have the time to list the number of characters you've actually written, and written very well. You're amazingly prolific, and I just want to genuinely say that I appreciate you as a writer, and I'm grateful that you took the time to do the interview with us. So
no, my pleasure. It's very kind of you to ask. I very much appreciate it. And anytime you need me again, just send up the bat signal, okay?
Thank you very much. And everybody be out there, be looking for the new Humanoids titles when they come out. Later this year, later this year, early next year. Yeah.
We'll have to hit you back up when they come out.
There you go. Out. Happy to
join
it.
That'd be great. Okay, well, thank you, and thank you to Taylor for co-hosting with me. Thank you to the audience, and peace and love, peace and love. Thank you very much for watching.